Well, good morning again. Thank you for joining me for us as we make our way through Moses' backstory, really. We'd started with Hebrews 11 that mentions him as a man of great faith, but it wasn't always like that. And the account in Exodus gives us some of the background and some of the struggles he faced. And so yesterday we thought about the battles that he encountered. But in reading it yesterday, one of the things I noticed was something I hadn't really taken note of. 40 years of Bible reading, and it still comes fresh. So after the bricks without straw incident that we talked about yesterday, where Pharaoh punishes the Israelites for even thinking they might be allowed to get out, the Israelites become so discouraged that they turn on Moses and then won't even listen to him. And what it tells us in Exodus is that Moses is discouraged as well. So if you look, it's in chapter 6, verse 12, when God tells him to go back to Pharaoh, he says, well, why? Why would Pharaoh listen to me? The Israelites aren't listening. Why would Pharaoh listening, since I speak with faltering lips? Then after that, there's like a break in the narratives, a bit like an ad break in a documentary, because it gives us Moses' family tree as to tell us who this Moses is that's been called to this task and isn't doing very well at the moment. So there's the ad break, and then immediately after the ad break, at the end of chapter 6 in Exodus, the same thing is repeated, a bit like they do in documentaries when there's an ad break. They sort of retrack and say, well, this is what was happening. And so you have the Lord saying to Moses, go to Pharaoh, and Moses saying, why would Pharaoh listen to me since I'm a man who speaks with faltering lips? So what's going on there? That's twice. It mentions it. In fact, it's 3 times because Moses talks about it earlier. Faltering lips. Well, it could be that he has a speech impediment. That's a possibility, but I don't think it's what it means if you look at the context of what Moses was. Because earlier in chapter 4, when God told Moses to go, one of the objections he raised was, he says, I've never been eloquent. I've never been a good speaker, not in the past and not now, and I'm slow of speech and tongue. So I think it's more likely that he was just conscious of a big weakness in this area. He's not quick thinking. He's not really good with words. He can't fire back some great riposte like they do in Parliament. They seem to pluck these funny things out of the air. And he would easily be defeated in debate by Pharaoh's counselors, who would be, let's be fair, very skilled and very clever. So he feels that he just hasn't got the power to do that. That's not his strong point. Actually, they do say that about Winston Churchill, that we have some of the greatest, most stirring speeches around, but in actual fact, he could easily be thrown if he was speaking off the cuff. He needed to prepare these words. I confess I feel like that a bit like that too. I know many people think that I've got away with words, but it's actually just because I have the time to write them down beforehand. When it comes to thinking on the hoof, argument and debate, actually my mind is really slow. And I'm easily thrown, and I don't win arguments because I just can't think of the answer until about 2 days later. Well, it's to this sort of failure that Moses returns when ultimate failure looms. I like to think of him going back to his little shack in the Israelite settlement and hiding himself away. He doesn't want to meet anybody out in the settlement because actually they're all against him. They blame him, and he's blaming himself. I imagine him sitting by the fireside, just muttering away, well, I told you I was no good at this. I told you I couldn't do this. I told you I was no good at speaking. So why would Pharaoh listen? How's this going to work? That's what we do, isn't it? When something goes wrong, we sit and brood, and we brood over how useless we are. We wallow in self-pity. Doesn't the devil love to remind us of, yeah, you're no good at that, and therefore that makes you useless at everything? How can God possibly use you, of all people? And so we become paralyzed. Might be with fear, might just be paralyzed into inactivity. I'm no good. Well, in Moses' case, in Exodus chapter 7, God simply reassures him, I'm going to do this. That's the reassurance Moses has had all along, but we do tend to forget what God has said. God said to him previously, I will speak, I will give you the words to say. But he reassures him again, I will deliver Israel, and I will overcome Pharaoh. So let's get on with it. And he sends him out to do a job. You'll see it in the next part of Exodus 7, to do a job that doesn't require speaking. He just has to take the staff and do the stuff with it. And then the next day, the first of the plagues starts. He simply tells him in the morning, go down to the Nile with the staff, make the announcement, let my people go or else, and then turn the Nile into blood. That's all he has to do. So God reassures him, and I think God reassures us the same way. He knows what we are. He knows our weaknesses. He knows everything we are. And it's often our weaknesses, the New Testament makes it clear, that open up the way for him to work with greater power. It's our weaknesses that force us to trust him, that show that we're not in charge. We're not actually accomplishing this. We're his instruments. And that enables us to work for him in a way that others see that God is at work and it's not our power. Even the Apostle Paul argues this way. We think of him as being a master of speech and argument, and yet in fact in 1 Corinthians chapter 2, what does he say about himself? He says, when I came to Corinth, I didn't come with eloquence or fine speaking or great arguments. Of course, Greece was the place for great arguments. He said, I didn't come with that, simply came proclaiming Christ. In fact, I came with weakness and fear and trembling, and yet it was the Spirit who did that, the Spirit who worked through me. Well, that's the same for us. So what can we do? Well, just offer yourself up to him and say, here I am. I don't think I've got much to offer, but actually here I am. Take me. Empower what there is by the Spirit. And then who knows? Who knows what can happen? So let's be encouraged. Yeah, we're not everything that we want to be. We do have areas of weakness, yet God can work through them. So let's trust him to do that to his glory. We'll see you tomorrow.